The left thinks they need to somehow patronize black voters by treating them as victims all the time. Judicial Watch filed an historic lawsuit against Evanston, Illinois. It's a city just north of Chicago, over a race-based reparations program they're running. Now, the left has been pushing reparations for blacks for years. It's now the new in thing. And Evanston took the step to spend or dole out $25,000 in cash to blacks only. If you're white, you can't apply. Hispanic, you can't apply. Native Americans can't apply. Only if you identify as black or African American. And I don't even know what they're thinking in having that as a rule, because I'm not quite sure what they think the distinction is. And here's my initial comment on it in describing the case. Hey everyone, Judicial Watch just filed a major federal civil rights lawsuit up in Illinois to shut down a reparations program. That's right, a reparations program. Up in the city of Evanston, Illinois, they're giving away $25,000 in taxpayer cash to blacks only. If you identify as white, you can't apply. If you identify as Asian, you can't apply. If you identify as Hispanic, you can't apply. This is a brazen violation of the 14th Amendment, federal civil rights law, and Judicial Watch, once again, is happy to do the heavy lifting with this major civil rights lawsuit. It's a class action to shut down America's first reparations program. The Constitution's supposed to be colorblind, but the left in Evanston and those who want to play the racial division card, they don't believe that, and Judicial Watch is hoping and praying a federal court will remind them of the rule of law. So it's a class action lawsuit, it's a federal lawsuit, and it's a civil rights lawsuit to stop what I consider to be outrageous lawlessness. And this is how the lawsuit opens. The lawsuit's available on our website. You can go look at it. The plaintiffs, I won't read the names, by counsel and pursuant to 42 U.S.C. 1983, bring this class action lawsuit on equal protection grounds against defendant City of Evanston's use of race as an eligibility requirement for a program that makes $25,000 payments to residents and direct descendants of residents of the city 5+ decades, if not more than a century ago. Plaintiffs seek a judgment declaring defendants' use of race to be unconstitutional and seek an injunction enjoining the defendant from continuing to use race as a requirement for receiving payment under the program, and request that the court award them and all class members damages in the amount of $25,000 each. So they've got some sketchy program to pretend that they're doing what they're not doing what they're actually doing. And they're pretending that, well, we're just limiting it to people whose ancestors were discriminated over a period of time, but they don't have to prove they were discriminated against, nor do they have to show who did the discrimination. I mean, these are the categories of people they use. Paragraph, well, I don't have the paragraph, I have it in the lawsuit here. I mean, in our press release. The first group of persons supposedly eligible for the $25,000 tax cash, the taxpayer cash payment, are current Evanston residents who identify as black or African American and were at least 18 years of old between 18 years of age between 1919 and 1969. Evanston refers to this group as ancestors. The second group are individuals identified as black or African American. Again, I'm not sure what that means. Are at least 18 years of age. I'm sorry, I was reading the screen. And have at least one parent, grandparent, or great-grandparent who identifies or identified as black or African American, lived in Evanston between 1919 and 1969, and was at least 18 years at a time. Evanston refers to the second group as direct descendants. A direct descendant is not required to be a current Evanston resident to receive a payment. So you can see that for yourself. What they're saying is only blacks can apply if they had lived here or had family who lived here over a certain period of time. And that's essentially what's happening. If you're white who had family who lived here in those same time periods, or they lived there personally in that same time period, they're not allowed to apply. And that includes our clients who are white. And it's really pernicious racialism and discrimination. I mean, I want to quote the lawsuit a little bit here because I think it's worth discussing, because it's an important lawsuit. This is the first reparations program in the United States. The left has been pushing it, but they've recognized there are significant legal hurdles because the programs are racist and unconstitutional. You know, we're supposed to have equal protection of the law under the 14th Amendment. They don't believe in that. The left doesn't believe in that. Why would they just give out $25,000 to someone based on their race if they believed in that? Let's go to paragraph 36. The lawsuit's available through our press release below and below. Defendant acting under color of law is depriving plaintiffs of their right to equal protection by purposefully and intentionally discriminating against plaintiffs on the basis of race. Defendant's use of race as an eligibility requirement injures plaintiffs because it is a barrier that prevents plaintiffs from participating in and obtaining payments under the program on an equal footing with persons who are able to identify or satisfy defendant's race requirement. Plaintiffs also are injured by defendant's use of race as an eligibility requirement because but for the requirement, plaintiffs would be eligible for and in line to receive $25,000 under the program. So under the program, they've already designated, I think, $20 million, and if they pay everyone who've applied, it'll probably be about $15 million, just this far. But that's because the people who can apply are only black. Now, if our clients were able to apply and members of that class, there could be tens of thousands of people who would be eligible. And they'd have to spend not $20 million, but billions of dollars, $1 billion, $2 billion. I don't know what the final number would be. They can't give out money based on race. I don't know how much more simple could it be? You know, and under Supreme Court precedented and the way the law's been applied, the government sometimes can take race into account, but what they call, there has to be a strict scrutiny. Even though I think the Constitution is a colorblind Constitution, but, you know, the left wants racism and racial division. And so they think of ways to allow that to take place under the imprint of the government, imprimatur of the government, right? Is that the right word? So strict scrutiny is the heightened level of analysis that the courts, that the federal system, are supposed to bring to government programs that kind of factor race into their decision making. Certainly, that's the case here. It's like you can't get the money unless you're a certain race. Nothing like it. Nothing like it out there in America other than in Evanston. This is paragraph 38. Defendant's use of race, and this is important to describe it because I want you to listen to it because they've got all these fake justifications to justify it. And you can see why they don't withhold or withstand scrutiny. Defendant's use of an eligibility requirement, defendant's use of race as an eligibility requirement cannot survive strict scrutiny. Among other reasons, defendant has not identified a compelling government interest advanced by its race-based program. Remedying societal discrimination is not a compelling governmental interest. Remedying discrimination from 55 to 105 years ago, or discrimination experienced at any time by an individual's parents, grandparents, or great-parents, has not been recognized as a compelling government interest. Defendant has also not demonstrated that its actions between 1919 and 1969 constituted a prima facie constitutional or statutory violation of anti-discrimination laws in effect at the time, let alone provide a strong basis and evidence that remedial action is necessary 5+ decades, if not more than a century later. I mean, so the government is trying to give away money for things that the government wasn't involved in or can't show that they were involved in. Decades after the fact. If it doesn't make sense, you know what? It's because it's not supposed to make sense. They're coming up with excuses to give out money based on race in violation of the Constitution. Defendant has also not and cannot demonstrate that its use of race as an eligibility requirement is narrowly tailored. So that's the kind of the strict scrutiny analysis. It has to be a compelling government interest, and it has to be narrowly tailored. The racial remedy, whatever it may be. The race-based remedy, I think. Among other shortcomings, defendants' use of race as a proxy for experiencing discrimination between 1919 and 1969 does not limit eligibility to persons who actually experienced discrimination during that time period, and therefore is over-inclusive. Defendant also failed to consider race-neutral alternatives, such as requiring prospective recipients show that they or their parents, grandparents, or great-grandparents actually experienced housing discrimination during the relevant time period because of an Evanston ordinance, policy, or procedure, as defendant requires for the third group of prospective recipients. Nor did defendants take into account race-neutral anti-discrimination remedies before adopting its race-based eligibility requirement, because there's a third group of people who say, I've been here, I've been harmed by discrimination that's policy-based, and you get to get money potentially not based on race. I mean, that's a straightforward, or relatively speaking, kind of a regulation, however problematic as policy, that doesn't implicate necessarily race. So what is the conclusion here? It's unconstitutional. We want it shut down. We request that the court declare the use of race in this program to be unconstitutional, enjoin defendant from using race as an eligibility requirement, award payments to all eligible individuals, award plaintiffs' attorney's fees and other litigation costs reasonably incurred, and grant plaintiffs other such relief that the court deems just and proper. And as I say in the lawsuit, in the press release about this historic case, the Evanston, Illinois reparations program is nothing more than a ploy to redistribute tax dollars to individuals based on race. This scheme unconstitutionally discriminates against anyone who does not identify as Black or African American. This class action civil rights lawsuit will be an historic defense of our colorblind Constitution. So it's, in many ways, it's, you know, the lawsuit's only 9 pages. I probably read half the lawsuit to you. I think it's interesting. That's why I read it. And what I love about Judicial Watch lawsuits, I mean, if you're a lawyer, I presume you'll be interested in it. As a non-lawyer, I think it's very interesting. I mean, because the law around race-based favoritism and discrimination is something that continues to be controversial and usually quite obviously is off base. How's that? It's beginning to get on base again. For instance, the Supreme Court outlawed the use of racial preferences in higher education admissions. And corporations are seeing the writing on the wall in that regard. But the left has got this crazed commitment to segregation, race discrimination, and division. I mean, it's like they pretend there are no more the civil rights laws don't exist. Evanston's pretending there's no civil rights laws that govern the city there. So we hope this case results in the ending nationally, not only in Evanston, nationally, of this idea that we can somehow start awarding reparations to individuals, not based on any direct harm, that, you know, in the ordinary course, if you're harmed by discrimination and you go to court and say, I got harmed by discrimination, you get damages potentially. Like you show you've been damaged and you get damages potentially awarded to you. But this amorphous idea that because your ancestors were enslaved or discriminated against, that you somehow get money generations later, with the only linkage being of the color of your skin, I mean, that's un-American. It's anti-constitutional. It's not just unconstitutional, it's anti-constitutional. I mean, no society kind of can run in the modern sense punishing people, because, you know, people are punished through this program. A, by being denied access to it on race and being asked to pay for it. Through tax levies and such. And of course, you know, leftist politicians kind of, you know, echo this program, you know, support for this program, because they, you know, the left thinks they need to somehow patronize black voters by treating them as victims all the time. And if the law gets in the way, they don't care. They still have a narrative to push to retain, obtain, and expand power. And this is an important civil rights lawsuit. And I've observed before, Judicial Watch is one of America's leading civil rights organizations, because we're the ones now defending the civil rights laws that ban discrimination based on race. The 14th Amendment, federal civil rights laws that implement the 14th Amendment. It's not just in Illinois. We've got a case in San Francisco. They're giving money to black transgenders. It discriminates in favor of biological black and Latino men. Excuse me. Latinos also get the benefit. I don't know. Are we supposed to say Latino or Hispanic? I guess it depends on what the government tells us in their materials. Or Latinx. That's the left's new thing, which is really dehumanizing. Would you want to be called Latinx if you were Hispanic or Latino even? Latinx. Some like transgender insanity that is. So this is a classic. They give money if you're a biological black or Latino man who identifies as a woman so a woman who's a black person doesn't get the money, but a man who says that he's a woman gets the money. That's crazy town. I mean, you know, there's this kind of intellectual insanity behind it, but it's also just illegal. It's unconstitutional. So that case continues. You know, they had a scholarship program in Asheville, North Carolina that we went after, and they settled with us by ending the race-based scholarship. They said they opened it up to all races. And of course, there were gender quotas in California, and race and ethnicity and LGBTQI quotas. Well, maybe they were just LGBTQ quotas at the time we sued, But California had mandated quotas for private corporation boards. And we sued in California twice and won in both instances and shut down those quotas. I mean, so that's historic civil rights work. I mean, who knew in California we could win a case defending the rule of law in matters of race and gender politics? It shows you why the rule of law is so precious, because despite all of our complaints about it, when it works, it can save us. It can save us. And when it doesn't work, as we're seeing up in New York, you can see the damage it does. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.